Hello and welcome to Friday Ask a Doctor. Today we're doing actually a double stream, so I'm here not only on YouTube, but I'm also on Facebook. So we're trying it, seeing if we can get it in both places and see what happens. If you're on Facebook, you're welcome to join us on YouTube, in that we have the link that's posted for the YouTube commentary, and this is a little bit more interactive, so you're kind of seeing an abbreviated sort of interactive version of what's happening on YouTube. So I welcome you to join us over on YouTube if you're not already there, and in the description it has those links. But nevertheless, you can still engage from Facebook if you want, but I highly recommend that you come over to YouTube if you're interested in having the most interactive experience. So if you're not familiar with how these Fridays work, is we talk a little bit about the video that was published this most recent week. And in this case, it was a really cool video that we did with Raphael Saadiq, the iconic R&B producer, singer, songwriter, just an all-around amazing musician, played on some of my favorite albums, including D'Angelo's Voodoo, which is kind of like just an all-time classic. Was also in a pretty popular R&B group in the 90s called Tony from my hometown of Oakland. And so we're going to talk about his rig. We're going to talk about some of the things that happened there. And then we're also going to be doing a giveaway every 8 minutes. So we're going to have a timer that's going to be running in the corner. And if you're coming to us from Facebook, you're not going to see this timer because it will only be on the interactive side here on YouTube. But every 8 minutes, we'll have a giveaway that's going to be courtesy of our friends over at D'Addario, and we have some great things. We have, I know it says XLs, but they're actually going to be NYXL 10s. We're also going to have capos. We're going to have string winders, and we're even going to have a American stage cable provided by our friends over at D'Addario. And again, every 8 minutes, we'll do a giveaway, and it'll be predicated upon questions that we ask that maybe have something to do with the video. And so this will favor people who have actually watched the video in advance of coming here today. But these may be things that you know already just because you're smart people and you've been following along a lot of the videos and some of the common things that we talk about and recommendations that we make. So definitely make sure that you hang around for those. Again, if you don't win the first one, we're going to have 5 total items that we're going to be giving away. So I'm going to start the clock immediately in the corner here, so we'll have a giveaway in under 8 minutes. But let's just go through and quickly talk about the Raphael Saadiq rig. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please throw those in the comments. Oh, it sounds like there's a phaser on. You know what? I know exactly why that is. Let me go to console and let me mute the input. Let's see, I'm on channel. What channel am I on? Channel 4. Bam, that should be gone now. We shouldn't have any issue with the phasing sound. Yeah, it like double tracks for some reason in Universal Audio and this cam software if you don't mute the input monitoring. So I don't know why that is, but it should be fixed now. Cool. So we're going to go into the rig. So let's start first again. Here's like sort of the big picture right there of Raphael Saadiq and his rig. And again, if you're on Facebook, you'll have no idea what we're talking about. So I highly recommend that you join us over on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, unless you're averse to YouTube, then you just won't be able to see these pictures that we're referencing on screen. So it was a great rig. And basically the way that this all came about is we had a customer named Eric Walls who plays with Tony Braxton and a bunch of other people that you would know. I mean, just is sort of like one of the top guys. Beyonce, he's played with everybody, and he introduced us to him because he had been working on some sessions there, and we did some really cool stuff on this rig. And a couple of them that I'm proud of, and you probably saw in the video, is we did this cool thing with kind of like what we did for Rhett Shull, in fact, where let me reverse the orders of these. This might make a little more sense. Where we basically combined 2 Zumas and put them into a single power strip. So there was just like a single input to the whole entire thing. And this is just like a really clean way to use 2 power supplies and have them just coming into a single output that just everything plugs into. Just keeps it really clean. Let me see if I can have an underneath. Let me see if I have a cool shot from underneath of the. Let's see if this one works. Oh yeah, that's a good one right there. Check that out. So this kind of shows you on my left here that they're coming into these two AC plugs that I kind of custom cut and put in here so that everything would just kind of, and it just barely cleared the top of the riser too, so that ended up working out really great. But this is bolted through the entire rig. Pretty cool thing. This is a nice way to do it. And originally we were going to use a little bit bigger interface, so I really needed to get these pushed over as much as possible. But because we ended up scaling back sort of the original interface idea, it ended up becoming, we had a little more space there than what we needed. I'll show you a photo underneath it as well so you can kind of see. Let me find if we got this underneath. No, that's the one we already showed. Let's see. How about that? Here's two of the wiring underneath. So it gave us a little bit more space. Originally, we were thinking that this buffer interface was going to have more through inputs, but really at the end of the day, he just wanted to have two mono split out. So we ended up using this Lely, which he actually already had. And there's no reason for me to make an isolated splitter if we already have this. And so all I did was provide the buffering to kind of insulate this thing, and it's got all his polarity controls and ground lifts from there. So this is great for adding that second amp. And his buffer interface ended up really just being like an input buffer insert to come after the fuzzes, and then an output buffer for both the different sides of the splitter output. So pretty cool rig there. And then another piece of it that I think is actually really cool on Raphael's rig is we did this cool mod to his fuzz. So I'm going to put up two pictures of this. So we had the inside of this is an original fuzz face, is my understanding, but the external part of it was done by Dustin Francis, and he makes some really, really cool fuzzes. And he actually was the one that restored my 70 fuzz face, which is kind of like a graphite one. You might have seen me use it a few times. And the issue with these is that they don't have any way to power them unless you use a battery internally. So what I did is I drilled, of course, a DC jack, and you can see in the left photo there that there's an Energizer battery. Usually you'd use a carbon battery, but this is just what I had to test it with when I was working on it in my workshop here, where basically it connects to the fuzz externally, because these fuzzes really sound best on battery. But there was no way to turn it off, so I put a little on-off switch on there. Now, this is a true vintage fuzz. I would have not drilled into it. We just would have made it work. But because this was sort of a replica, and the internal parts are original, this was not something that disrupts the internal parts. This is just turning on and off the battery. So just a really simple, easy way to do it. Really, it was a cool feature of this rig that I thought was a good way to address using a vintage fuzz. But before we do our giveaway and we talk a little bit more about some of the cool things of this board, I want to answer a few questions, and then we'll do our giveaway in 2 minutes. And again, if you're part of our audience on Facebook, I highly recommend you hop over to YouTube if you really want to see the full interactive experience here that's going on the screen and the giveaway components. And the links for all that are in the description of the actual stream that's happening on Facebook. So let's take a couple of questions that are coming through. And Mahia's been kind of going through and trying to regulate in the comments so that we know, so I can easily identify questions quickly. Let's see. This is a question about last week's video. It says, last week there was a bunch of questions about the Fender engine room. I got my hands on one this week and built a rig with it. The level 12 works great so far. No strange noise or anything. And everything about it looks like it would be good on paper. I think the challenge is that I just haven't seen one in the wild. I haven't tested it, so I don't really know. But everything about it looks like it's promising. Stephen, check out our video we did. I think it's a week or two ago. We did kind of like a buyer's guide for switchers. We talk all about this and kind of compare it to the other switchers that are out there and kind of where one might be better for you than another. And so I think that what's in that video will be better than anything that I can really say in summary quickly. And I think it really gives you its place in sort of my perspective amongst the other switchers that are out there. So check that video out. And then if you still have questions, you can always throw us a comment, and that's no problem at all. Let's see. Other questions. This is from Kevin. Last question before our first giveaway question. What a killer rig. What was the Vertex Proto in the upper left-hand side of the board? So this was not a deliberate placement of any sort of prototype. There was supposed to be a reverb pedal there, and you can see that throughout the course of the build. And the reverb just started doing some weird stuff where it would oscillate in the bizarre fashion and just wasn't working properly. And so it made it difficult to test the rig. And so what we did is we threw something that was sort of an equivalent size and put that in its place for the purposes of the demonstration. And then Raphael's going to get that pedal fixed under warranty from the manufacturer. So it was just kind of a placeholder. It wasn't something that's a production unit. It was just a delay prototype that we had that had a similar jack orientation so that it didn't require us to rip apart anything or make new cables or anything like that. It was just a really pretty easy one-to-one that would logically work in that place in the signal path. So we're at 0 seconds for our first giveaway. So I'm going to ask a question here. It's going to come up on the screen. The first person to answer this question correctly is going to win from Diodario a free set of NYXL 10s. I also have NYXL 9s, I believe. Mejia can confirm on that, but they're both NYXLs, so we'll make sure that whatever it is that you want, 9s or 10s, we'll get those to you, shipped directly to you. So first person to answer this correctly in the comment section wins. Now remember, if you're on Facebook, you're going to need to come to YouTube to answer these questions because that's where we're gathering our answers. So make sure that you do that if you're interested in getting one of these. Oh, and Mejia has clarified there's no 9s at the studio, so we only have NYXL 10s. So if you don't want 10s, then don't answer this question. All right, so it's going to come on the screen. First person to answer it correctly on our side, because it might come in. I noticed that some people's, like their internet, when they type it in, their comment shows up before everybody else's. We're going off what comes on first on our end. So the question is, what is the model name of the Vertex pedal board that we used on Raphael's rig? So we have lots of different model names of pedal boards, and I want to know if you know the model name of the Vertex pedal board that was used on Raphael Saadiq's rig. And if you just need a reminder of what it looks like, here it was, showing that on the screen. First person to answer this correctly will win. And it's Michael Lucas got that one. And it was sort of a trick question in that we actually had to make this one custom because we didn't have a pedal board that would fit that many pedals on it. I think the size of the board ended up being something like 42 by 16 or something like that. So way bigger than anything that we make. It would not be travel friendly, but because this is relatively stationary at the studio, it wasn't an impetus for it to be compact or really lightweight, although it actually didn't end up being that heavy. So if you didn't win this one, no problem. I'm going to start the clock again, and we're going to have another giveaway in 8 more minutes. But let's talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that was on the rig. And again, if you're one of the people that's watching right now on Facebook, you can come join us over on YouTube, and you have a little bit more interactive experience. So another cool thing about this is the buffer box, and we talked about it a little bit when we were going through some of the stuff on this. But basically, so you got an in on the back side, which is basically where the fuzzes are patching into, and then you have a buffered out for the tuner that split off the input buffer, and then you have a main out that goes to the following pedals, and then you got 2 output buffers going to the amp. And so this is kind of like what's doing all the signal conditioning, again, happening after the impedance-sensitive devices like the fuzzes. So if you're looking at the front of the pedal board here, you'll see, it starts over on the wah and then goes to the volume pedal and goes to the univibe, the fuzzes, catches the buffer, then continues the rest of the way. And then there's an output buffer that's split out, so you can use two different amplifiers at the end of it. So that's a pretty cool little feature for him. Again, he didn't want stereo. He just wanted to be able to use more than one amp, just for maybe different textures and tones. But for the purposes of the delivery, I'll show you some pictures of that. This was at his studio. That's one shot there. Let's see if we got a wider shot of the rig. Let's see. Nope, don't have any wide shots of the rig. I guess it's just what you see in the main thumbnail here. And we used, actually, you can kind of see it off of the left side of the pedal board there. We had a small Princeton there that he owned that we were using for all of the tones in the rig video. And we didn't do like a really extensive demo, I wouldn't say, but we did sort of just a real basic kind of overview and talking more about how he was going to be using the rig and kind of how he was using it as a songwriting tool, because ordinarily when he's writing, he's using the piano, and I think he wanted to be able to have more creative experiences and more creative time with the guitar, so that he could kind of use that to orchestrate some of the things that he was going to be doing. And hopefully we'll get to see that he's using this on a few more of his upcoming albums. We got to hear a little sample of an album that he's working on now, which sounds pretty cool. But let's go to more questions today. I want to try to get through everything if I can in the time that we have. So let's see what we got here. Michael Walmack asks, do you ever run out of room with those square plugs? Well, we don't run out of room using the square plugs because they're square plugs. It would usually have to, if you ran out of room, I think it would be more indicative of not having done a good planning stage of the pedal board. And when you're watching some of the rigs builds that we do, or we talk about some of the techniques of building rigs, one of the kind of things that we talk about in terms of the sequencing of building a rig is you want to measure everything with plugs inserted into the pedals, so that you don't get to a point where you're too far along and you realize that you haven't considered the space that not only your audio plugs will occupy, but also the DC plugs. And this is one of the real shortcomings as I see it. If you're a Raphael Saadiq fan, you get that. One of the shortcomings of some of the pedal board planners is they have no consideration for routing of cables, and they have no consideration for how much space different types of plugs take up. So a square plug doesn't take up very much space comparatively to like a Switchcraft Pancake or a Switchcraft Right Angle, or some of the other sort of competing or budget versions of those types of plugs. And if you don't consider that and you lay everything out and you're like, great, I fit all my pedals on whatever size platform it is that you wanted, and then you actually get all those pedals in that size platform and you realize that you don't have any room, well, there's not much to do once you can't unscramble the scrambled egg. So I would say that I don't run out of room because I'm deliberate about the planning process. And sometimes there can be like little things that happen, like somebody changes pedals or something like that, where it may somehow screw up the planning stage, and we have to kind of like be really strategic, by either raising certain things up or moving the order of certain things, maybe not in terms of the signal path, but in terms of the placement, so that you can get the jacks to fit properly. But ordinarily, that's not something that we run into, because when we're planning the whole pedal board, we're making sure that everything's inserted so that we don't have that problem too late in the game. This question is from Ray. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Please correct me in the comments. Have you ever done any more R&B musicians pedal board? If yes, who? Well, I wouldn't say that we're like a Raphael Saadiq. A lot of more behind, more like supporting musicians, like studio musicians, touring musicians. Carrie Too Smooth, Eric Walls, who was the guy that introduced us, who was, being a paid session musician for Raphael on his newest album. Those are two guys that come to mind immediately that are pretty well established in the R&B scene and are playing for some of the best. I work a lot with Tim Stewart as well, who plays with Lady Gaga and Rihanna, and is also doing American Idol, and he's a fantastic R&B player, although I haven't built him a pedal board, but we've just worked together a lot with different pedals and things like that. He's amazing. And then, we've worked a lot with Michael Thompson, and Michael Thompson was on all those hit Babyface records. in the 90s and up through the kind of early part of the 2000s. He was on all those records, and he may not be identified explicitly as an R&B guitar player, although certainly he was on. I think there was a time that his wife or somebody had posted on Facebook like a Billboard's chart, and they had posted the top 100 from that decade or a group of years, and he was on like 10 of the top 20 songs or something like that sort of defined that era he had played on, and a lot of those were R&B hits that he had done for Babyface or for LaFace Records, generally the record label that was created with L.A. Reid and Babyface. So those are the ones that come to mind. All right, my friend, what are some of the differences between the Rat and the Dynamic Distortion? I would say that the Rat is a less controlled gain. I would say the Dynamic Distortion has more, it's a little tighter and a little bit more controllable. I would also say that, I'd say tone stack wise, they're similar. They're very similar. The Rat, of course, works in reverse. And I would say that the Dynamic Distortion cleans up much better. So you can get a Dynamic Distortion to react more like an amp. So when you come down on the volume pot, it's going to get really sparkly clean, more so than a Rat will. And then when you of course, bring up the volume, it becomes a real fire breather. But that would be some of the key differences that I would say. Okay, Mahia is going to throw up questions, just reminding. Are you familiar with any of the Jackson audio pedals? This will be the last question before our next giveaway option. So just a heads up on that. I was having some issue with the TRS MIDI on them. They take signals from the ring channel and the Maris MIDI I/O box sends on the ring. Well, I didn't know that on the Jackson ones that you needed to use a MIDI box to do it. I thought you could just make the ordinary TRS to MIDI connection. I don't know that it needs to. And it seems like a lot of folks now are sort of changing the rules for MIDI as far as the established standards. And so this is why you have all these different standards where people are using the protocol a little bit differently than normal. But my understanding is that theirs is a pretty standard, they're using the three pins, which is really all that we're using for pedals, and really, I mean, the shield is connected, but technically the shield is only connected on one side, really, because the pedals themselves are floating it on one side, or they're supposed to be. But I'm pretty sure that you can I don't think you need any sort of conversion box. I think only the Maris and some of the Empress stuff that I'm aware of has sort of unusual uses of how they wire the MIDI. But I think the Jackson one is just a TRS to MIDI, and I think it's just standard that the shield is the center pin, and then I forget the pin out of the tip in the ring, but I don't think you should need any sort of conversion for that. I would try using it on its own first without using the through box and just seeing that you can get it to do program changes. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that it was just a standard MIDI and it's just using TRS. So let's go to our second question today for our giveaway items. Again, the question is going to come up on the screen. If you're on Facebook right now and you're watching, you're not going to see the question. So I highly recommend that if you're on Facebook, you migrate over to YouTube, and the link is posted in the description of the Facebook live stream. And the first person to answer this question correctly will win a free capo from Diodario, the Pro Capo Plus. So be sure to get in your question. First person that gets it correctly wins. The question is, name the first pedal after the input buffer and the last pedal before the output buffer on Raphael's pedal board. So you want the first pedal after the input buffer and the last pedal before the output buffer on Raphael Saadiq's board. Now, we did talk about how we had to make an audible at the last minute on the output. So either one of the devices that would have been on the output will be fine. That can be one of two answers on the output side. But the one that's after the input buffer is fixed. And if you looked at any of these pictures even and you didn't even watch the video, you might even know this. So these are some trick comprehension questions to see the quality of the watching that was happening. It's almost like a pop quiz. First person to get that correctly. And maybe this was too hard of a question. I don't know. This may be taking people a little bit longer to simmer on. And if nobody gets this one, okay, my friend, he got it with compressor and reverb. So yeah, those are correct. So my friend, whoever you are, you won. And by the way, any of our winners, Michael, Lewis, or Lucas, and my friend, make sure that you hit up Mejia. He's going to throw his email there in the chat. And he just needs to know your shipping information, email address, phone number, those sorts of things. In particular, if you're international, just because the customs folks will require that information. But if you didn't win, no big deal, because we have another giveaway happening in 8 minutes of another item from Diodario. And shout out to Diodario and Devin over at Diodario for hooking us up with all these great giveaway items. And ordinarily, we will have True Tone as well as a part of this, but we used up our allotment in the first week of the month, and so we won't have any more True Tone until next month in May. So starting on our next series of live streams, we'll have more True Tone items available as part of the giveaway. But I feel like we've covered like the rig pretty well. I mean, I don't know that there's much more to talk about. I mean, here's some other cool shots of it. The Memory Man on there was pretty bad. Really cool pedal, and I say bad, I mean good. The Vibe pedal. I realized like I restarted the clock accidentally, but we'll go a little early on the next giveaway to make up for that. The Vibe pedal on there is super cool. The Univibe from Prescription Electronics. That's like one of the best vibes of all time and really sounds great. And if you didn't know about the Prescription unit, it was actually designed by Bob Sweet, who is the same one that has like the Ultra Vibe and the Mojo Vibe. Same guy designed that for Prescription Electronics. And I actually think some of the Prescription Electronics originally were manufactured by ADA. And ADA now actually owns Prescription Electronics. And they've re-released a few of the items. I don't think the Vibe unit is in there, but I think the Clean Octave blend, the Cobb pedal, I think was re-released. I think the Prescription Electronics Experience pedal was re-released, and I think a few of the other overdrive devices. But man, that was a really cool one. And another sleeper that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is the McCoy-Wah, the Crybaby version that Dunlop made. Is absolutely killer. It's a really good wah pedal. Sounds incredible. Really great sound. Very very hand wired. You know, like they definitely are doing it with fidelity. And I also say the Giuliano is a really cool chorus. And he kind of wanted something that had that kind of 70s chorus type sound. And I thought it sounded really great. Really loved all those. All these pedals were actually pretty impressive. I dug them a lot. So let's go back to some more questions here. And again, I'll try to get through as much of them as I can. Let's see. This is from Total Evo. I feel that we need why you need an interface video. I know you talk a lot about building one and how it works, and I feel like some people might ask why you would need one. Well, and if you don't know what an interface box is, what we're talking about, just to clarify, and again, if you're on Facebook, you'll have no idea what we're talking about because we're hosting this primarily on YouTube, but you can always come and join us over there. So let me find. All right, so here's an interface box right here. This is the one on his board. So in essence, I think the benefit of using one is a couple-fold. One of them is that this provides all the buffering for the rig. So you don't need to have any sort of other boxes that are doing it. Everything is contained within here. If you're doing stereo, mono, insert loops, 4-cable method, you can build these to accommodate any of those things. So that's a great thing. The other thing that it does is it makes this sort of a centralized place where all your cables are coming to and from on the pedal board. And so it can kind of help prevent having to have cables exiting and entering from different parts of the pedal board. And the other thing that I think is less talked about is that if your interface takes a hit, your pedals aren't finished. Like you can easily replace a jack on an interface box pretty easily. It can be harder to do that on a pedal without destroying the pedal completely if somebody really nails it. Because the buffering and interfacing of the rig, certainly it helps improve the tone, but you could still use the pedal board without it. Whereas if if somebody busted your first pedal in line and that's a vintage wah and you're in a Jimi Hendrix cover band, like that gig's not going to go good, And so there are some things that it does where it alleviates the pedals from having to be plugged in and plugged out all the time. This becomes the hub. This is what absorbs the wear and tear. This is what's providing all the signal conditioning. And this is providing an organizational benefit for the entire rig, so you don't have stuff coming in and out of everywhere. So I think that they're helpful in those regards. Let's go to Luis. Hi, Mason. About buying new pedals, do we have to look up about impedances or similar features to determine if a pedal is good or bad? I would say I would only worry about that if it's a buffer. I wouldn't worry about it so much because the pedals are all over the place. So if you were trying to maintain a 1 meg input impedance and a 100 ohm output impedance for every pedal, you would run out of track quickly. So I wouldn't worry about it so much with the pedals themselves. And again, that will only come into play when the pedal is on, if it's true bypass. So I wouldn't be concerned. I'd go for pedals that you like the sound of, and I would just hold that standard with your input and output buffers. I wouldn't worry about it so much with ordinary pedal devices because they're just too different from each other. There is no standard there. We're really just we're really just shooting in the dark. This is from Lance Cox. What's the best chorus pedal that doesn't suck tone or volume when engaged? Well, I think a lot of them don't. I think that some choruses, especially like the old school ones, like the old Roland or CE1, the Boss CE1, they had some issues, but they weren't really optimized for guitar specifically. Like people would use them on keyboards and all sorts of stuff. So there could be some issues with some of those older like Electro-Harmonix units and stuff like that. And I don't think that that's representative of the choruses that are out there. Now, most companies that are making choruses are doing a good job at making sure they sort of meet people where they are and where they would be on a pedal board that would be instrument level and all that stuff. So I don't know that I would say that I'm not thinking of anything that are bad. I think it's really more of a matter of taste. I thought the Juliana sounded really great. If you kind of like that, like kind of a chorus that can get a little flangey, like it's nice to kind of do some Andy Summersy kind of flangey chorus sounds. I really like the Arion SCH1s a lot. They're poorly built, but we had made a version for a while that was a signature device for Michael Landau, and Exotic, I think, still makes a version that they've sort of upgraded with true bypass switching and stuff like that. That's also really nice. I really like the sound of that chorus. We talk a lot about the Meistersinger from Jacques pedals as an excellent analog chorus that's true bypass and doesn't have those consequences. And I was just talking with another YouTuber the other day, Michael Nielsen, and he was talking about how much he loves the tri-chorus from New Neighbor. And it's a digital interpretation of a tri-stereo chorus, and he thought those really sounded excellent. I haven't tried that particular one, although I'm friends with Brian New Neighbor. I haven't tried that one, so I think all those are great options. And we did get a super chat from Vinicius Rosa. Does the impedance of a volume pedal matter in order to use it with the Vertex Boost? The answer to that is no. That's sort of the beauty of the Vertex Boost, is the impedance doesn't matter anymore. You could literally throw anything in there from, I mean, the range of volume pedals is maybe as low as 10K and maybe up as high as 250K or 500K maybe. It doesn't matter because everything in that loop is completely impedance isolated. So we'll have no issue whatsoever what impedance it is. Now, I would say in general, if we're talking about it being in a low impedance loop like that, generally the lower the impedance, the better. But it's not going to be any different if you choose one or the other. Now, the one thing I would say to choose, though, and the thing that the Vertex Boost can't overcome, is if you have a taper that you don't like, it's not going to fix that. So some people will elect to use a taper of a volume pedal that they like, that's a little bit more even in its travel from start to finish. And so I would choose based on the taper that you like, and then the second thought to that would be the impedance. And if you have a choice between a 25K and a 250K, choose the 25K. But if you already have a 250K, it shouldn't be something that concerns you of like, oh, it's going to sound worse now, because it's just not going to happen like that. So we got 6 seconds left, and I know that I reset the clock accidentally. So we'll go immediately to our next giveaway question. And again, if you are on Facebook and you're wondering where this giveaway question is happening, it's all happening over on YouTube, so be sure to join us there. We're going to be giving away next a string winder from D'Addario Pro String Winder. These are excellent. We use them in our studio. I use them here at home. They're excellent, excellent, excellent products. We love D'Addario and our good buddy Devin over there at D'Addario, who's making all these giveaway items happen. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to put a question on the screen. First person to answer it correctly will win this item shipped directly to you free of charge. Here it goes. Question 3 is, what are the 3 pillars of the Holy Trinity of Tone? This is a term that we've been coining. I don't know, maybe somebody else has said it before, but not that I'm aware of. We're the first I know of that's talked about the Holy Trinity of Tone. But basically, these are the 3 things that need to be occurring in order to ensure that you have a board that's as quiet as possible, sounds as transparent as possible, and is going to be as reliable and roadworthy as possible. If you observe the 3 pillars of the Holy Trinity of Tone, you are guaranteeing yourself to be in good stead for any tour gig, for any studio gig. You're going to have a high-quality board. And we got Zochiwa is our winner of that question. So an example of the Holy Trinity of Tone, the 3 things that always need to be there. 1, and this could be in any order, high quality input and output buffers, preferably 1 meg input impedance, 100 ohm output impedance is kind of what you want to shoot for as a good baseline. 2, isolated power supplies, preferably switch mode, but there are some linear supplies that are still excellent. And the 3rd thing is high quality, low capacitance soldered cables. Friends don't let friends go solderless. We've talked about this plenty of times. There are some clear drawbacks to using it. Solderless has come a long way, of course, but it is still not the same quality. Now, I'm not talking about the quality of the cable. The cable on a solderless cable is not the problem. It's the connection that it's making with the plug where the problem is. If you really love the sound of your solderless cables, great. You can just solder them. That's an easy way to just repurpose what you already have. But those are the holy trinities of tone. And if those 3 things are observed, you will definitely be putting yourself in a position to have great tone, a reliable rig that's going to be quiet, and is going to perform how you want it to when it's time to play. I'm going to restart the clock, and we're going to do another giveaway in 8 more minutes. And we'll dive back into more questions. I forgot where I was. So let's see. I remember Lance Cox. Okay. Perfect. All right. I think we're here. Dionys. Hey, Mason. I hope all is well. Which patch cables do you recommend? Well, you can always watch our patch cable shootout. And if you watch the patch cable shootout that we did, and we had some guests kind of evaluating these, we had Dan from the Pedal Show there, we had Ariel Posen, we had Rhett Scholl, we had Josh Scott from JHS. And basically the determination is that once a buffer was involved, that all these major brand cables really became pretty nullified in terms of the difference from one to the next. And so the real winner was the high-quality input and output buffer. And if you used a high-quality input buffer and a high-quality output buffer, it really didn't matter within a degree. I mean, obviously, if you went really crazy and started using, like 90 or 100 picofarad per foot cables, you might notice some difference there. But all these were sort of in a range roughly between maybe 30 picofarad per foot, maybe a little lower than that, maybe 20, and then up to, I think, maybe as high as maybe 40 or 50. And within that range, with the buffer, they were all pretty negligible. And I did see somebody give some feedback and say, well, I would never use 30 feet of cable on my pedal board. But the one thing that demo didn't show is that you, of course, if you're going through pedals, even if they're all true bypass, you have all the interconnections within or between the pedals, and all the wiring in between or inside the pedals between the input and output jack and the foot switch. All that adds up to capacitance. And the plugs themselves, you have 2 plugs per pedal, those all have a capacitance, and it's not negligible. Some of the brands of plugs have as much capacitance as the cable that interconnects them in a lot of cases. And I actually have a diagram of that on the website, on the Vertex Effects website, where I measured at the time, this is about 10 years ago, so it's not up to date with all the new stuff, but it measures everything from Switchcraft to Neutrik to Amphenol, all the major plug manufacturers, and rates how much capacitance they have. And a lot of them have more than a foot or two of cable just in one connector. And so this is another consideration that sort of kind of goes under the radar of people considering those things. And so I really like the 2314 from Mogami. And the reason why I like it is I think it sounds great. It's very small. It's easy to use. And it's very maneuverable on a pedal board. So for that reason, I really like it. But there could be other cables that would work equally well, especially if you had high-quality signal conditioning. Next question is from Andre. I'm struggling to find a pedal that adds some gain for Neo Soul, but doesn't drown out the sound. Well, if it needs to be distortion, I mean, you could try sort of like a nice, mellow, like kind of transparent overdrive. I know that word is used a lot, but ones that I really think are nice for that are kind of like Blues Breaker sort of derivatives can be nice. So like a JHS Morning Glory could be nice, or a Prince of Tone if you didn't want to go to the King of Tone. I think those are still a little cheaper. Another one that's really nice is the Greer Lightspeed is a nice kind of mellow one, not too over the top. And the Timmys can be nice for that too, although I kind of like a Timmy better for like a rhythm kind of a distortion. I don't know that I don't like it as much for lead. But those I think are all sort of like mellow, not too over the top, and you can dial them to almost kind of be boosty. And then if you really want to go just straight up boost, which is just volume increase, I can't say enough good things about our Vertex Boost. I know that it's biased, but I mean, I've looked at everything that's out there, and I have to say that I think in terms of transparency, we're doing it as good as it can be done. But that may not be what you want. If you want a little gain, it's not going to give that to you unless it's breaking up your amp because you're hitting it so hard. So I would start with those other recommendations first and then go from there. This is from Matt. Envelope filter before or after boost? Man, these are good questions, and we are making a video. Literally, Mejia just finished making diagrams on this exact thing. So there's kind of two different schools of thought here. I would say ordinarily it works best closer to the guitar because your dynamics trigger the envelope better. But, you'll see guys like John Mayer using a Qtron after distortion devices, and it sounds great. So I think that, we need to temper this with, there's no 100% sure way to do any of this stuff. There can be interpretation. This can be a matter of taste. I would say ordinarily, though, guys would use envelope filters up front, closest to the guitar ideally, sort of, pending any sort of impedance-sensitive devices. It'd be pretty close up front. Like I just made a rig for Paul Jackson, who's, the god of funk and played all of those Daft Punk guitar parts, minus like the kind of some of the Nile Rodgers stuff. But he was like the guy that was doing kind of the core, the technical, funky stuff in there, and played on all the Michael Jackson stuff, or a lot of the Michael Jackson stuff, especially the Quincy Jones produced ones. And he uses it right up front, and that's just kind of like how those sounds were created back in the 70s and 80s. They were using those things up front. So I would recommend. I like it best up front, but I can see that other guys do like it further down the chain. So that's where we are. So yeah, I would say definitely put it. I guess your question was about boosts. Let me go back to that real quick. I would say I would put it I would put it close to the guitar, and then if the only reason I put a boost in front of it is if you were changing pickups and you had set the triggering point to a place where it doesn't work so well if your pickups have drastically different outputs. Because sometimes if you set it up with humbuckers, it'll overload it really quick, and then it'll almost trigger too early. And so you don't want to have to adjust your pick attack too much. So sometimes guys, like, and I think even John Mayer does this with the Katana, is he used to have one that was just, I think, a compensation so that it would balance out differences in outputs, so that he wouldn't be triggering it prematurely with lower output, or with higher output pickups rather. So I think it depends on how you're using it, and if you need that compensation. Okay, so Jerry, what are your thoughts on the Strymon Compadre compared to the OB1? I have never compared them side by side. I've seen both of them individually, and I've put both of them on rigs before. They both seem to be great devices. I don't know that I have a complaint about either of them. And I'll do one more question, then we'll do our next giveaway. But we still have lots of giveaways left. So let's see. This is Charles T. Any plans to sell your own Vertex pedalboard interface boxes? You'd sell a ton of them. You'd probably sell a ton of them. Yeah, we're working on them. And I think I've shown them a couple times here that we're going to have two versions. One that would be built into the actual leg of the pedalboard. And then another one that could be a standalone unit. And they'd be the same unit. It would just be one would be designed to fit in an enclosure that would actually bolt into the leg. And the other one would be just an ordinary interface box that would be a little smaller than a Hammond 1590 B size box. And it would do everything. It would have input-output buffers. It could be stereo output buffers. It could go for cable method. It could do wet, dry. It could do wet, dry, wet. Or you could use it as an insert if you wanted to have external pedals kind of coming off the board. So it would have all those things incorporated into one box, and it would be really, really small, and try to make it affordable for everybody, because there aren't a lot of high-quality, affordable options. So in this case, we may consider making this in Taiwan for that reason, or at least the circuit board level stuff, so that we can try to keep the cost really down, but the quality high. And in that way, we can make it accessible, because a lot of people, when it comes to buffers, it's like working on the foundation of your house. It's like you don't see it. It's not like a kitchen remodel or a bathroom remodel that's really sexy and has all the glory, and that you get to enjoy, showering with a waterfall shower, or you can walk into those, showers where it's like being in a car wash, where it seems like it's really cool and has all the sex appeal. The buffers are not that, and so people are reticent to spend money on it, even though it's so critical. Like, to me, I always think it's so bizarre when somebody's got all the coolest stuff out there, and then like they use terrible cables, and it's like they're undermining all the high quality stuff that they bought and they put on their board. And I think buffers are sort of like that. So it is time for another giveaway, and this time we're going to be giving away another set of NYXL 10s. I know it says XL 10s, but I promise they're NYXLs, which are the best strings that D'Addario makes. So we're going to ship those to you, and it's a 3-pack. So you're going to get 3 sets. I think I might have forgot to mention that before. It's a 3-pack. So you get 3 packs of them for free, shipped to you directly. So this question is going to come up on the screen. First person to answer it correctly wins. And if you're on Facebook right now, definitely join us over on YouTube so you get a chance to win one of these items. Let's get it up on the screen. So the question is, what is the device that is providing galvanic isolation on Raphael's pedal board? What is the device that is providing galvanic isolation on Raphael's pedal board? There's a device on there. We talked about it really briefly today, but it's providing galvanic isolation for, I guess technically it's not really for the pedal board, it's for the amp, but it's running through the pedal board to go to the amp. There's a device on there that we repurposed of his in order to do this. And if he didn't have one of those boxes, then we would have had to build that in to the system. But let's see who gets that one first. This is what's being provided for galvanic isolation. Give a little hint. Charles T. got that one, and that was the Lely P-Split. And I actually saw that they had come out with a new P-Split that's even smaller than that one, which is pretty cool. So shout out to Charles. Charles, make sure that you reach out to Mejia so that you can get him all your info so we can get that shipped to you. And we'll restart the clock. If you didn't win, no problem. We have one more giveaway. Our final giveaway is going to be for a Diodario instrument cable shipped directly to you. So be sure to hang out for another 8 minutes or so that you can get that last giveaway item. We'll answer some more questions to finish us out. All right, let's see what we got. This is John Bruno. Should all the fuzzes be placed before buffers? I would say if it's an impedance-sensitive fuzz, definitely. But there are some that actually can go okay with buffers. Actually, there was one on Paul Jackson Jr.'s rig that I was working on the other week that was great with a wireless, which is essentially the buffer. And it was a Dunlop BC 108 that has like a buffer like on-off switch, and it sounded great. It sounded really good. Usually the tried and true buffer for like a rack with a wireless is the Boss fuzz, I think it's like FZ5 or something like that. It's a silver pedal. That one does great in a rack. This one I thought was really good. It was fuzz facey, sounded great, was okay with the buffer, didn't sound like garbage. And so I liked it. I was a fan. America First says, how much did that pedal board cost? That rig is huge. I wish I had that. Well, I don't build pedal boards. You may not know this. I don't build pedal boards as like a higher thing. We really just do it for the purposes of the YouTube content. And so really what Raphael's covering is like the cost of the materials and the cost to produce the videos. And we just don't want to lose money showing this sort of content. So really that's what it's covering. And I don't know what the exact amount was, and our bookkeepers deal with the billing and stuff like that. But yeah, I would imagine if you went to like a place that does this, I think most of the shop rates around there, can range from $50 an hour to $150 an hour, and I think that took me maybe 16 or 17 hours to build. It took me a couple days, like working on it, a couple of half days in a row, like 3 or 4 half days to get it done. So, that would just be labor, that wouldn't be parts. So, I mean, you do the math on that. All right, let's see. Next one. Kevin Lee, what's the best technique when it comes to mounting wahs and volume pedals to a Vertex pedal board? Usually, I just use 3 strips of Velcro, of dual lock Velcro, or we now have Power Grip that we're selling through the rigdr.com, which I like primarily because, one, it's cheaper than dual lock, and dual lock can be very expensive. And secondly, that I don't need to have 2 different densities in order to get that really high quality stain power where it's not going to move. And the third reason why I like using the Power Grip is that it doesn't leave a residue. And so if I pull it off, I don't have to like be there like scraping it off with a plastic crowbar to get the residue off the board or hit it with Goo Gone or whatever. So it's just a cleaner application, and that's really why I like it. And we do sell it on the rigdr.com. So usually with the wah, I'll put like a strip between the screws on the wider side, and then 2 at the lower part at the bottom where between the screws, and then I'll put a longer strip in the middle, and then I'll match it up obviously with what's on the board. Same with the volume pedal, and I don't have problems with those coming off as long as one problem I noticed that people have with using these types of hook and loop systems is they don't allow the Velcro time to kind of cure before they start ripping stuff on and off, and so it compromises the ability to stick. And the other thing is they don't always clean the surfaces really well. So before I put anything down, I always clean the surfaces so there's not any dust, there's not any dirt, there's not any oil. And then when I put down the Velcro, I usually hit it real quick with a little bit of a heat gun, and that kind of helps the adhesive set in a little bit. And then I try not to move anything for like a day, like pulling stuff off. I try to kind of keep it undisturbed for that amount of time. And then that seems to hold stuff really well. We don't typically have problems. I don't bolt them through the board typically. it would be a rare circumstance that I would do that. And the reason why sometimes that can be a problem is it creates a weird sort of rigidity on that side of the board where it can really move stuff quite a bit when it's bolted to the board. So I usually don't do that. I know some people do, but I don't usually do that. It also makes it, especially with wahs, if you ever have to like mess with the pot inside of it, and you want it to kind of exaggerate more of the top end and stuff like that, like trying to take off a wah is like a real pain. Or if you have a volume pedal and you need to adjust the tension, it's hard to do that as well if it's bolted through. I mean, it takes a lot more. You have to undo all those screws. So that's that. Let's see. This one is from Nadim Ahmad. What's up, man? Any overall suggestions for a compressor pedal? I nabbed a milk box from your prior pedal sleeper suggestion, which I love. Looking for something a bit more versatile that can do sort of a DBX thing. All right, I got you. And I was talking about it with Michael Nielsen the other day. I mean, I love our Nile compressor, but I would say that it's not versatile. It is definitely that Nile Rodgers like chic thing, the Prince thing. This is the most DBX of the DBXs that are out there, and it's kind of like people slept on this because it wasn't the ordinary Keeley 2-knob or 4-knob. The limiting amplifier GC2 is the closest in a pedal format that I've ever found to a DBX 160. It really nails it, and it can take line level even, because most of those guys that were using DBX compressors, they were using it after the line out, so they weren't using it in front of the amp. So this can handle it, and it sounds great. It's a really good compressor. It's very versatile. You can dial it to be very subtle, and so I really love it for that. I think it's slept on. I think you can get these for a deal on Reverb. I love that compressor. It's really great. And again, it's one of the few that can take line level and not just completely be obliterated. So I love it for that reason as well. So check that one out. I think you're going to dig it. Let's see. Using a memory boy into a dispatch master at the end of my chain, struggling to get audible delay trails. I've tried my reverb first, and it sounds even muddier. Thoughts or new delays? I mean, I wonder if something's wrong. On the memory boy, doesn't it have like a dry out? Is it possible that you're using the dry out and not the effect out? Because like original Memory Man has a dry out on it. I'm just wondering if that has anything to do with it. I mean, are you setting the mix in a certain way where it's like 100% wet or something like that? Or is there a kill dry option? I'm trying to like think about what I remember about the Memory Boy. Because those are the only reasons why I could think that you'd be having these problems. I mean, if you turn the mix, I guess here's the thing you could try. Turn the mix all the way off, because at that point it should just be all dry signal. And is it still muddying up the tone if you turn the devices on or off? And I guess isolating it to just the pedals, like if you just go guitar, Memory Boy, amp, is it having that behavior? If you go guitar, dispatch master, amp, is it having that issue? Like isolating if it's one of those pedals, make sure you're not going through the dry out, make sure there isn't some sort of kill dry option, which is just sending it all, 100% wet. Make sure that that's not happening. And see if you can isolate to one of the pedals. I think that would be the best move in terms of trying to isolate those problems. But we're at 0 seconds, so it's time for our final giveaway for the day. This again is for a Diodario American Stage Cable 10-footer. So whoever answers the question correctly is going to win that. So let's go to the question. First person to answer correctly, and if you're on Facebook, come over and join us on YouTube if you want to answer this question, and we're going to be giving away this item here to the first person that answers the question correctly in the chat. The question is, name 3 Vertex pedals that Raphael has on his pedal board. This should be easy if you've seen any of the stuff that we've been putting up as we've been going through some of a recap of his board. What are 3 Vertex pedals that Raphael has on his board? Should be easy. There are 3. Technically, you could even say 4 if you're concluding that prototype. But that's not, he didn't choose that. We just threw it on there because that was what would work. and that was John Bruno. Got it in a heartbeat. And just to show the pedal board again, let me show one that's a little easier overhead. That's an easier overhead. So you could have said the steel string. He's got the version 1. He's got the Nile. He's got the dynamic. Any of those three would work. I guess you could say the prototype in the corner if you remembered that part. Although again, technically, really that would be a reverb pedal. We just kind of threw it on there last minute because it was the least disruptive that would fit on the board and maintain the signal path until the warranty came through or the warranty replacement came through for the reverb that would ordinarily go in that position. So congratulations to him, and I'll take a few more questions here, and then we'll sign off, and then we'll go to the private stream, and that's for our Patreon and supporting members through therigdr.com. And if you're interested in that, you can always head over to therigdr.com and check out some of the different membership options, or head over to Patreon and check out some of the membership options as low as $5 a month, technically $4.99 a month. And if you can't afford any of those options, you can always send us an email where we have an option for a free account, which gives you all of the basic rights and privileges at no charge. And we don't have any questions asked about that. You just request one and you get it right away. It's no big deal. We don't want there to be anything that stands between you and great tone. So please do feel free to hit us up for a free account if you would like one for any reason. Next question is, what's your opinion on EBS flat patch cables? Using them for a year or so now, and they've been reliable and sound good to me. Your recent shootout video video on cable types made me curious if you like them. I don't know that I have anything bad to say about them. They are soldered. I took one completely apart, so they're totally soldered, which is great. That definitely is a good thing. I just don't think that they're great to work with if you're trying to do like a pro type pedal board and have everything look really neat. The ribbon thing is just not that easy to work with, and they're not customizable. You have to buy the size that you want, and then there's there's kind of nothing in between. It's like 6 inches and 12 inches and 24 inches, and I think that's it. So if you don't fit into that category, then there's not really anything you can do. And my focus on the video is really about ones that could be customized, where you could buy the cable in bulk, you could solder it yourself, and we have plenty of soldering tutorials. No matter which ones you wanted to use, you could go ahead and DIY those yourself. So I don't know that I have anything bad to say about them. It's just not something I would use because I couldn't adjust the lengths or anything like that. Let's see. This is from Mongolian Death Worm. Oh, this is Jay. Hey, Jay. Google switched it to my band login. Okay. What can I do to enhance sustain so I can get rid of my noisy compressor? Well, there's other compressors out there, so not all of them are as noisy as others. I actually think that Keeley one that I was talking about, it's pretty quiet. I think this is a great compressor. I'm trying to think of other ones that are a little more quiet. Some of those like optical ones can be pretty quiet. Like the Diamond compressor is pretty nice for that. Another one that's good is the Demeter Optocompulator. Those are two optical compressors that are actually pretty quiet. They're not, I don't know what you're using now or what your threshold is. That's my compressor joke. For noise, but those are, I'd say that they tend to be a little quieter than some of like the Dynacomp or Ross ones that you might have used in the past. Let's do a couple more questions here. This is from MN Jimmy. I don't know if that's Minnesota Jimmy, but where can I find angled TRS cables that are only 6 to 10 inches and not like 10 feet everywhere else? I think you can just get them off the rigdr.com. I'm pretty sure. I think we have angled TRS, and I think we have straight TRS too. So you can order them right there, and I think you can order any length from, I think the lowest size is maybe 4 inches and the longest size is maybe 4 feet, something like that. So you can just go to therigdr.com and you can order it right there. I'm 99% sure it's there. And if it's not, you can send us an email because I know we have all that in inventory. Wit, what's up, buddy? Do you know if he's using the steel string as an always-on pedal? I don't think he is. I think he was just using it as sort of like a booster type sound to maybe other things that were kind of going on before it. Let's see. Jonathan, I'm looking for an off-board stereo DI box for a board that's running an amp cab sim. would the pinstripe DI box be the best option? Well, I don't know how long is if you're going out of a cab sim, those are already pretty low output impedance. So depending on how far away the board is, you may not even need to use a DI. But I still think the SGI is kind of the standard. And I remember looking at the specs of the pinstripe, and it seemed like it was pretty high for a low impedance or a balanced conversion. It was like 500K or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was pretty high. Because I think that the output impedance of like a Strymon, for example, I think is 100 ohms on those. And so you should be, if you have lower capacitance cable, you should be able to go a ways with that. I would say you could probably get away with almost 100 feet without loss if it's a low enough capacitance. And a really low capacitance cable to use for that is the Gepco X band. They're like 20 picofarads per foot, and it sounds pretty good. I mean, for this case, you're already pretty low. I don't think it's the sound is going to have less of an issue, not the same way as it would on the input cable, but you should be able to go pretty far with that. And this is from Michael Womack. Would a Boss MS3 suffice as an input and output buffer? No, it's got a 1 meg input, but it's got a 1K output, so that's 10 times worse than what is recommended. And do you have plans to start building an acoustic pedal, DI, or effects? Well, our boost can be used with an acoustic, absolutely. But no, I don't have any plans currently to make anything that's explicit for acoustic or a DI application. And I'll do 2 more questions, and then we're going to go to our private stream. This is from Fawin. Let me know if I'm saying that incorrectly. I apologize if I said it wrong. Is it okay to use a high impedance volume pedal after a buffer? You can, it's just not as good as using a low impedance one. So like if you were going to get an Ernie Ball, you get the 25K. But it also depends on the output impedance of the buffer too, I guess. I mean, presuming it's a good buffer, I would say usually using a low impedance volume pedal is ideal, but not a requisite. I think that it's better if you use one, but you know, it's if you would ideally want to use a 25K or something lower like that. Is it going to be the end of the world if you use 250K? No, it may sound a little not quite as good, but that would be my recommendation. And then last one, Jason Rivera. Thank you for. I don't know if I would call me a frontline tone hero. Okay, yeah, I don't know that I have any real frontline experience, but I'm happy to create some entertainment while our real frontline heroes are doing their work. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Jason. And thank you to everybody that tuned in today. I hope everybody enjoyed. And if I didn't get to your question, I sincerely apologize. You can either request a free account and jump in on our live stream that's for the supporting members next, or you can throw that question down in the comments. And I think as soon as I end the stream, you'll be able to do that. I don't think the comment section's open yet. So if you haven't already, make sure you give us a thumbs up. That just helps if you enjoyed it. If you didn't, then give it a thumbs down, I suppose. And I'll give you a couple seconds to find your question if you didn't get it answered, and you can just throw that in the comments below as soon as I end the stream, and I will come back and kind of revisit this over the weekend and make sure that any of those questions that were outstanding get answered. So feel free to do that. I'll give people, maybe 30 seconds to copy their question if they didn't get it answered, and so that they can have that kind of held in their copy paste, so that as soon as I end the stream, you can refresh and throw that in the comments, and I will get to that over the weekend so that your question can be answered, even though we didn't get to it over the course of the hour and 11 minutes that we're at so far. Give you a couple more seconds, maybe 10 more seconds to get that together, and then we'll end that. And then for the private streamers and the subscribing members, Mahia will throw a link up in Patreon and email one out to the supporting members so that they can jump on that. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next Friday.